Hi everyone, welcome to Chapter 10. And Chapter 10 is all about 3D shapes. So we've spent Chapter 9 talking about 2D shapes. Chapter 10 is all about 3D shapes. Half the unit or half the chapter is going to be about surface area. The other half will be about volume. Today is just kind of catching us all up and getting us all onto the same page. What are faces? What are edges? What are vertices? Hopefully those sound familiar, but we'll see if those are things that you're familiar with. And then we'll also talk about what makes a prism, what makes a cylinder. My hope is that I spend the next 5 minutes getting us all on the same page, and so that when I start talking about, the base of a prism, we all understand what I'm talking about. So the first 3 things you need to know about any shape is how many faces, or what are faces, but how many faces there are, how many edges there are, and how many vertices there are. So faces are any flat surfaces. So in this triangular prism, there's 2 triangular bases. So 1, 2 faces, 3, 4, 5 bases total. There are some arguments in the math world about how many faces a cylinder has, but the argument that we're going to make is that faces are flat surfaces. And so there's 1 base and 2 bases that are flat surfaces. We would say that a cylinder has 2 faces, even though it does have this curved third side, if you wanted to call it that. This pentagonal prism has the 2 bases there, and then it also has the 5 sides all the way around it. Ooh, scared myself. And so those flat surfaces are the faces. Edges, hopefully this is familiar with you, so I'm going to go a little bit faster. The edges here are where 2 or more faces come together. Now, if 3 faces came together, we'd actually call that a point, or a little a vertice there. And so when you are looking for how many edges there are, you'll find that there's patterns and everything in math. There is technically like a formula for it. If this is a pentagonal prism, the base is a pentagon, which has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 edges or 5 sides. The top is a pentagon, so it has 5 sides. And then the center with all of those rectangular sides have 5 edges. And so when I'm asking you how many edges a prism has, it is the number of base sides times 3, because it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So it'd be 5 times 3. And then edges, kind of a same, I wouldn't call it a trick, I don't know what to call it, but if the base has 5 vertices, that means the other base is going to have 5 vertices. So if it's 5, it's just times 2, because there's 5 vertices on top, or on bottom, 5 vertices on top. Same thing with like a triangular prism. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you need to know how many vertices there are, how many edges there are, and how many faces there are. And I'm going to compare some of these shapes here together. Hopefully this works. Are you gonna work? Yes, it is. Okay, awesome. And we're just gonna compare some of these shapes here quick. You need to know what a prism is. A prism is a 3D shape that has 2 congruent bases. So in this case, we call it a pentagonal prism because the bases are pentagons. This is a rectangular prism. You actually, like if I said, okay, find the surface area, you need to find the base, you could argue and say, well, that's the base. That's the base. And rectangular prisms are kind of special in that way that you could just argue that any of the sides are the bases. Whereas triangular prisms, pentagonal prisms, etc., you could not argue with me that this is the base. The 2 shapes that are congruent to itself, or the 2 unique shapes, are going to be your base. So this is a pentagonal prism, this is a triangular prism, this would be a rectangular prism. And the rest of the sides are going to be rectangles. And I put that above pyramids, because prisms and pyramids have a lot to do with each other. A prism has a base, has a shape, so this would be a triangular prism. I do. I totally forgot to take it out. Sorry. I also have a rectangular or square pyramid, a rectangular pyramid. So the way you name it is the name of the base. So in this case it's a rectangle, in this case it's a triangle. And then the sides are triangles, are congruent triangles, whereas a prism, the sides are rectangles. So prisms have 2 bases and rectangular sides. A pyramid is very similar, but it has 1 base and triangular sides. Now, cylinders and cones. Cylinders and cones, we don't say like how many points are there, how many are vertices or faces or edges or anything. We just identify them by their radius and by their height. So when I'm talking about a cylinder, there's only one shape the base could be. It has to be a circle. So I might say a 5 centimeter radius cylinder. And so you'd know that that would be 5 centimeters. And this is kind of where this whole 3D shape in like our 2D communication with each other will be difficult, because me drawing 3D shapes or showing you 3D shapes and then you interpreting them on a 2D screen, that's stuff that we can get, that we're going to work on together. So you need to know all about cylinders. You also need to know what a cone is. A cone will actually found it as a third of a cylinder in terms of volume, so they're very, very similar. But they both have a base that's a circle. A cylinder just has 2 bases and a curved edge, whereas a cone has 1 base. And this curved edge, I would say, I think I totally am going against what I said just a minute ago, but a cone does have a vertex or a vertice, whereas a cylinder doesn't have any. And we don't consider these edges necessarily, because edges, we consider these straight sides here. So today's assignment, you're going to just be identifying shapes, faces, edges, vertices, and making sure we're all on the same page for these 2D shapes, or 3D shapes.